I love that picture. It's in the wrong place. It should be with the Eucharist. Let me give you some things that might help somewhere. This is the last Sunday for a long Gospels. For the last, 4 Sundays, 5 Sundays, we've had to stand up there and almost fall down as we read the 3 hours. But that's the end of it. Next Sunday is Palm Sunday. These long ones, these long run readings, came from the Gospel that's much different from the other Gospels. The Gospels that were read the last several Sundays were Gospels from the Gospel of John, the 4th Gospel. John's Gospel is different from the so-called synoptic Gospels. Gospels of Mark, Matthew, and Luke. The synoptic Gospels, they were. And in many ways, the synoptic Gospels is more like a biography of Jesus, where the Gospel of John, listen to this, is more a lyrical and theological meditation on Jesus Christ and his reconciling. You remember in all these others, Jesus is out running around, going to places to help people, to do things, to whatever, and they're very easy to read, very easy to understand what is happening with them, and you can understand what Jesus is doing. And when you get to the 4th one, it's a little hard to understand. I've had spent how many years I know trying to figure out everything that's going on in the 4th Gospel, the Gospel of John. And I'm going to try to say a few things about that today because it is very important, our Gospel. Because here in this Gospel, you hear more about the person of Jesus, what kind of person he is, and how he works himself. And so we'll talk a little bit about that through seeing the wonderful thing, I shouldn't say wonderful thing, from the, you ever heard of somebody called Lazarus? That's who we'll be talking about. Lazarus and his death and coming back to life. And so let us start and look about what happened when Lazarus got sick. They don't say what kind of sickness it was, but it didn't say how it got it, anything. It just starts out. It says, one of the sisters, or maybe both of the sisters, got concerned, and they sent a message to Jesus that Lazarus was very sick and would like for him to come and cure Lazarus. Now Jesus said that the sickness does not lead to death. It does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified. Now, why would he do that? Why would he want to do that? I don't know. They don't tell us. With this information, Jesus did not think that there was any need for him to go start to look at Lazarus. And so he's gone around for about 2 days. And then all of a sudden he decided that Lazarus really had died. Now he didn't tell the people who were with him that he had died, but he had died. He died. Said he had died to himself. And he said, let's go, because he is dying or is dead. And so somehow or another, the message had gotten back to Martha and Mary that Jesus was coming, but slowly. Now, you know how they must feel sitting there with their brother very badly, and Jesus is not doing anything that he could do. How would you feel like that? So anyway, Martha went out to meet Jesus when he got there. And so when he met Jesus, he went to him and said, my brother would not have died, but even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him. And Jesus said to her, and listen to all of this, Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. And Martha said to him, I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? And she said to him, yes, Lord, I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. And when she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told Mary that Jesus had come. And she left her house and joined Martha and the ones with them. When Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw that the sisters and the whole company were weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. And he said to them, where have you laid them? And they answered, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. This is where that famous Jesus wept came from, in this poem. And Jesus wept. So the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man, had kept this man from dying? Could not he have opened the eyes of the blind man, have kept this man from dying? Why did they do for one that he did for the other? Which was last Sunday and this Sunday. Lazarus was laid in the cave, and a stone was laying against it. And Jesus had them take away the stone. And at that point, he said, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone, and Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you for having me. I knew that you always hear me when I said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go. And that was the end. That was the end. Now, what does this tell us about Jesus and about God and about us. What do we see? One thing, I think, as we listen to this whole thing, one thing that kind of came out, to me at least, was his not just weeping or wept, but it also said how close he was to these people. He was there, like it, finally wanting to be with them and to be held them. And what he was saying is that he loved them. He cared for Lazarus. And he was developing, or had developed, a close relationship. And that is what God is doing for us. He wants to be with us, to help us, to be with us, to do with us what he needs, what they need, what we need. He wants us not to go away from us, but to be with us. And he wants to enter into something between one person and another person, and that are very close together. And that's what all of this was about in this whole thing about Lazarus. When you pick it up and see what happened with going to Lazarus and doing all of the things to Lazarus to show how important it is for him to be with the people and his people. And so out of this, I think, is about the only really thing that we can really come with, and that is what it is, that we are being called by God to be with him, to work with him, to let him work with each of us to do those things which need to be done in our lives and in the lives of others around us. And as we go forth, I hope that we can see and turn to God, to Jesus, to be in our lives, keeping us together, and in our hearts that we be better because we are with God and Jesus in our hearts, and keep us there on a right way. And as Jesus said, he's looking at all of us and sees what we are, and he is weeping. And let him weep for us to make us better people. Amen.
Amen.